Good evening. The leaders of Yugoslavia's two largest republics, Serbia and Croatia, have told their peoples to be prepared for a civil war. But the head of the federal army tonight called for a political agreement to transform Yugoslavia without any more bloodshed. The Serbian president, Slobodan Milosevic, said he hoped for a peaceful outcome, but hinted federal troops would move into areas of the breakaway Republic of Croatia that have a mainly Serbian population. The latest peace talks in Slovenia, the other rebel republic, broke up without agreement today when the Slovenes refused to surrender control of international border posts.
Federal fighter planes swooped low over Croatia's border with Serbia. The Croatian government says 30 jets have been moved to a military base in the area. The Interior Ministry says army commanders are colluding with Serbian terrorists. It has obtained plans which show they are intent on capturing as much Croatian territory as possible. The Serbian president, Slobodan Milosevic, went on television this afternoon and told the people of his republic to prepare for war. He said the federal army should be posted on all territories whose inhabitants want to stay within Yugoslavia, a clear reference to Serbian communities on Croatian soil. Croatia's Interior Ministry said in the past few days there had been synchronized attacks on police stations and the terrorists had threatened to mine a nuclear power station. Though the Serbian extremists, known as Chetniks, are active in less than 5% of Croatian territory, they are now infiltrating into other parts of the republic.
The present lull is only a temporary one. A new storm must be expected. And in fact, we've just heard that federal troops are distributing weapons and commando uniforms to the local population and training them for military action.
Once again, the ceasefire looks very shaky. Slovene leaders have refused to hand control of the republic's international border posts back to federal forces by noon tomorrow, a key demand of the peace plan issued in Belgrade. The federal president, Stipe Mesic, said there were some circles who did not want peace. It was a clear reference to extreme Serbian nationalist groups. He said they wanted to create a greater Serbia on the ruins of Yugoslavia. Carol Walker, BBC News, Zagreb.
And President Mesic said tomorrow's talks with a delegation from the European community could provide the only lasting peaceful solution to the crisis. The foreign ministers of Holland, Portugal and Luxembourg will meet representatives of the 6 Yugoslav republics on the Croatian island of Brioni.
The Slovenian decision to release more than 2,000 Yugoslav army prisoners was something of a concession to the federal authorities. But the events of the last fortnight have generated so much suspicion and mistrust that tomorrow's peace talks are going to be uphill work. When the European Community team assembles in a hotel on the Croatian island of Brioni, it will be its third attempt to end the crisis. This time the foreign ministers, who decided to try again when they met in Holland yesterday, have invited the people they believe are the key players. They include Franjo Tuđman, the president of Croatia. The Republic's leadership said today that if serious fighting started there, it would make the conflict in Slovenia look like Disneyland. The Slovene president, Milan Kucan, will be at the talks as well. EC diplomats complain that the leaders of the breakaway republics and the federal representatives who'll join them haven't so far been capable of a rational dialogue. The Yugoslav Ministry of Defense has also promised to send a team to the EC meeting. The foreign ministers want to find out who's giving the army its orders and what they plan to do in the next few critical days. That was on the minds of the foreign ministers of Yugoslavia's neighbors, Italy, Hungary and Austria, when they met in Budapest today. They're all trying to find signs of a political will in Yugoslavia for a solution. Their problem is that so far it hasn't emerged.
President Bush has passed a message to President Gorbachev about arms control, leading to increased speculation about a superpower summit in Moscow later this month. The failure to finalize a strategic arms reduction treaty has so far delayed a summit. President Bush has said he hoped a treaty would be ready for signing this month.
Since President Bush and President Gorbachev last met in Helsinki, the chances of another summit have been soured by American suspicion over Soviet intentions on arms cuts and worries over the winter about whether Gorbachev was turning back to old hard-line tactics against his opponents. But Gorbachev's attacks on the hardliners in the last month and his hopes for Western support for economic reform when he meets the leaders of the 7 rich countries in London in 10 days have changed the atmosphere. The message delivered by the American ambassador Jack Matlock to President Gorbachev today concerned arms control, according to American officials. And Soviet spokesmen this week have expressed the hope and indeed the expectation that there will be a summit in Moscow at the end of July. Some Soviet spokesmen have even expressed the thought that the two leaders could sign a deal to reduce strategic nuclear weapons, leaving the exact details to be sorted out later. That's not enough for the Americans. They're insisting that a cast-iron agreement to cut a whole generation of weapons is ready before the two leaders sit down to a summit. Tonight it looks as if that could be on the cards. David Loyne, BBC News, Moscow.
Here, the Bank of England has taken the unusual step of staying open this weekend to answer queries from investors worried about the closure of the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. It set up a special telephone hotline, which has been flooded with calls. The Labour Party says it'll be calling for a common statement on the affair.
For once, the Bank of England was at work on a Saturday, dealing with the aftermath of a major banking scandal. The worldwide operation to freeze the assets of the Bank of Credit and Commerce International is being coordinated in London, and American officials have flown in to work with the Bank of England. The bank has also been fielding many calls from worried BCCI investors. Those with accounts in Britain are being told that the UK Deposit Protection Fund should eventually compensate them up to a maximum of £15,000. But first, officials are finding out what's left in BCCI's coffers. The banking authorities are now discovering the full extent of the crisis facing BCCI. It's emerged that last year the bank made a huge operating loss, and banking supervisors say that even if they hadn't stepped in to close it, the bank would have faced collapse by next week. Liquidators from the accountants Touche Ross have been into all of BCCI's 25 British branches today. They're conducting a detailed investigation into the finances of the bank, closed yesterday after the discovery of what's described as a massive fraud. Labour plans to question the Chancellor about the affair next week.
One of the things that we will be pressing very hard with the government is to know how soon the Bank of England actually realised that things were going wrong and how quickly they then acted, because then we can make an assessment about how effective the present system is.
But Abu Dhabi, whose ruling family is BCCI's main shareholder, seems to think action was taken too quickly. Tonight, the Emirate was reportedly planning a worldwide protest over the seizure of the bank's assets.
A United Nations team has witnessed the destruction of Iraq's last declared ballistic warhead. 28 conventional warheads have been destroyed during the last week. Another UN team has arrived in Baghdad to try and inspect Iraq's nuclear installations. An earlier delegation was prevented from visiting 3 sites, and Western diplomats have accused Iraq of concealing nuclear material.
The last attempt to inspect Iraq's nuclear facilities was a fiasco. After 2 weeks, UN inspectors who'd been demanding access to suspicious materials left empty-handed. And there's little optimism that the latest mission will prove any more successful. But at the United Nations last night, Iraq's ambassador renewed official promises to cooperate.
Which our president confirmed that all the facilities, all the assurances would be given to the UN team in order to have unhindered, unimpeded access to every site.
Security Council delegations, however, greeted that with skepticism, having heard it before.
Clearly, the Iraqis are still not complying with their obligations to cooperate with the inspection teams and not producing those materials and that equipment that they moved from Fallujah and from Abu Ghraib before that.
It's not certain how long Saddam Hussein can carry on bluffing. He's said to be concerned about the impact of the UN's disarmament program on his defeated army, and military personnel have been moving nuclear materials to different locations to avoid detection. Despite the razzmatazz of recent weeks, American officials are not certain the battle's over yet. President Bush has said he's prepared to use force to make Iraq comply with the demands of the Security Council. Christopher Gunnis, BBC at the United Nations.
The British businessman jailed in Iraq, Ian Richter, is to be allowed a visit from his wife next week, the first for a year. Shirley Richter hopes to meet President Saddam Hussein in her efforts to get her husband freed.
Shirley Richter left Britain this morning, hopeful she'll see her husband on Monday. With no diplomatic relations between Britain and Iraq, Mrs. Richter's visit to Baghdad's been arranged through Soviet envoys. Ian Richter, a chemical engineer, was imprisoned for life in Baghdad in 1986. The charges against him were never made clear. Mrs. Richter hopes to see Saddam Hussein and has asked him to release her husband on Tuesday, when it's her birthday.
The best thing that can happen is for Ian to be released and come home with me. That would be wonderful.
And on your birthday too?
That would be even better.
Last month, Douglas Brand, another Briton Iraqis jailed for life, was set free. That has encouraged Mr. Richter's family. Before leaving for Iraq, Mrs. Richter met in private earlier this week with the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister. She says they reassured her that her husband's case remained a top priority in Britain's relations with Iraq.
A mother and 5 children, 2 of them her sons, have been killed in a road crash in the Lothian region of Scotland. 6 others were injured. The accident happened in thick fog on the A1 just outside Edinburgh. Local MPs say the road is dangerous and should have been upgraded long ago to a dual carriageway.
The accident happened on this stretch of the A1 near Edinburgh at about 2:30 this morning in thick fog. 11 people were travelling in this transit van when it collided with this minibus. A third vehicle then crashed into the wreckage. 6 people died. A 25-year-old woman and 5 children. 3 adults and 2 other children are in Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, where their condition is described as serious but stable. The accident has renewed calls for this single-lane stretch of road to be upgraded.
You know, it's painful to say we told you so on this sort of occasion, but all the local people around here know that that road is inherently dangerous, and this has been a disaster waiting to happen, and I'm afraid there may be more unless something's done about it.
Local people say this stretch of road is dangerous because after travelling south on dual carriageway, the road suddenly becomes single lane. But drivers are still tempted to overtake, even on a blind bend. As the main East Coast route south between Aberdeen and Newcastle, campaigners say the road warrants further investment.
Now with news of Steffi Graf's 3rd Wimbledon title in 4 years and the rest of the sport, David Davis.
The longest women's final at Wimbledon for 15 years, it lasted more than 2 hours, ended with Steffi Graf winning her 3rd singles title. She beat Gabriela Sabatini of Argentina in 3 sets after a match of changing fortunes and with a quite thrilling climax.
A match fit to set before a future king and his mother, a former pupil of Steffi Graf. She had superior seeding and 9 Grand Slam titles behind her. Gabriela Sabatini had 5 consecutive wins over Graf and a newly expanded game. No wonder it was close. Not quite a classic for the quality of the tennis, but certainly for drama, which built as Graf's famous forehand clinched the first set 6-4.
Game and first set, Miss Graf.
But Graf's certainty suddenly deserted her, and it was Sabatini, in a set where service had been harder to win than lose, who settled first. Here she played her most confident tennis of the match.
Game, Miss Sabatini.
This point gave her a 5-2 lead. Shortly afterwards, she won the set 6-3. By now, the temperatures were in the high 90s, but there was no hiding place on court as the game went into its 3rd hour and Sabatini manoeuvred herself into a match-winning position. Twice she broke Graf to lead 5-4 and then 6-5 with service advantage, but each time Graf found the shots to frustrate her. The final turning point came as Graf levelled at 6-all. She then held her service for a 7-6 lead and moments later produced a final devastating forehand.
Game, set, a match, Miss Graf.
It was her 3rd Wimbledon title, but only her 1st Grand Slam win in 18 months. Her recent absence of success has been put down to her highly publicised family problems. They're now clearly behind her, and ahead lies only more German success from tomorrow's Beckerstich men's final.
England's cricketers are in danger of losing the 3rd test against the West Indies at Trent Bridge. They had a deficit of 97 runs on first innings, and when they batted again, they were quickly in trouble. At the close, the West Indies still led by 43 runs.
For Graham Gooch, losing a morning to rain was no great problem. Losing control of the match looked a much more damaging prospect as Logie continued where he left off yesterday. But luckily, De Freitas removed the imminent threat with his first ball, thanks to another blinding catch by Ramprakash. Any thoughts that Logie's departure would open the door for England, though, were soon dispelled by Marshall, whose dismissive treatment of Sid Lawrence was hardly music to English ears. Though the dogged Pringle did, rather unexpectedly, remove Dujon for 19, his dismissal merely heralded more spirited resistance from the tail, admirably shepherded by Marshall on his way to a highly accomplished half-century. All the time, West Indies' lead was growing, and by the time Marshall on 67 skied De Freitas to Illingworth to end the innings, it was a potentially decisive 97. With a difficult 2 hours to negotiate, England could hardly have made a worse start as Atherton, for the second time in 3 innings, played no shot. Then Hick went without scoring. A Test match career so keenly anticipated may now temporarily be in tatters. More seriously, with only 25 on the board, Gooch fell to the potent Ambrose for the first time in the series. With the captain gone, so much now depends on Alan Lamb prolonging his own Test career with a match-saving innings. The odds, though, must favour a West Indian victory, which would square the series.
The Welsh golfer Ian Woosnam has won the Monte Carlo Open, taking his winnings this season to almost £500,000. Woosnam's margin of victory today was 4 strokes after he birdied the first 3 holes. His final round of 67 enabled him to finish 15 under par. Well, the new soccer season will begin in 6 weeks' time with Ron Atkinson taking his new side, Aston Villa, to play Sheffield Wednesday. It's less than a month since Atkinson left Wednesday in controversial circumstances. Elsewhere, the champions Arsenal are at home to their London neighbours Queen's Park Rangers, and Liverpool entertain Oldham, who will be returning to Division 1 after an absence of 68 years. In racing, Environment Friend made up for a poor showing in the Derby by winning the Coral Eclipse Stakes at Sandown. The Grey could only finish a disappointing 11th at Epsom, but today he just beat the favourite Stagecraft. Lee Mackenzie describes a quite thrilling finish.
Inside the final furlong, but Environment Friend trying to come again. Stagecraft has it, but he's tired in front. Environment Friend is wearing him down on the stand side. Stagecraft has it by a whisker, but Environment Friend goes past close home. Environment Friend had Stagecraft in a photograph. It's very close.
So Environment Friend the winner at 28-1, with Stagecraft second and Sanglamore third.
The Queen Mother has unveiled a memorial to the 167 men who died in the Piper Alpha oil platform disaster 3 years ago. In a specially dedicated rose garden in Aberdeen, several hundred people watched the Queen Mother unveil 3 bronzed figures of oil workers. After a short memorial service, the Queen Mother met some of the bereaved families, many of the 62 survivors, who'd raised £100,000 for the memorial. And that's the news tonight from David and me. Good night.
The great political drama of the decade, the downfall of Margaret Thatcher, now recalled in the Ridley memoirs.
From then on, it would be memories, bitter memories too, of that fateful day and of her betrayal by those whom she had brought to her cabinet table.
Tomorrow, Nicholas Ridley goes on the record to name Nigel Lawson as Margaret Thatcher's assassin, and the former Chancellor answers back. That's Ridley against Lawson over Thatcher. Tomorrow, 1 o'clock, BBC1.
A very good evening to you. In southwest Scotland today, the temperature got up to 28 degrees Celsius, 82 degrees Fahrenheit. I know somebody who's 46 today, and if you convert that into Fahrenheit, that's 115, but I think that's being just a little bit cruel. Now, the high temperatures over the continent particularly set off these thunderstorms, mainly over Holland, over Belgium, and over eastern parts of France. And I've noticed this evening one particularly nasty thunderstorm in the Eindhoven region. That's going to creep up through the southern North Sea, perhaps clipping into East Anglia and Lincolnshire before the end of the night. Low pressures then out to the southwest, pushing their way in, keeping the weather unsettled over the next few days. So then, through tonight, some showery outbreaks of rain in the southwest, some clipping up through East Anglia, perhaps up into Lincolnshire as well, but many inland districts ending up dry and ending up fairly misty, and quite mild too. 11 Celsius, for instance, is 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow then, any mist inland soon clearing away, then some sunshine, but showers from the word go along this eastern side, and particularly in the far southwest, where it's going to stay fairly windy, and indeed showers could break out almost anywhere through the day. It's going to stay windy down in the south. That's going to take the edge off the temperatures, but for many places inland, another very warm and sultry day. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
Come in, spinner!
The spin of a coin decides the loves and lives of 3 Australian women.
Your wife's very nice. You said there was nothing left between you.
What should it be, Deb? 2 absent friends?
Why don't you marry me, Kitty? Huh?
Okay, I will.
Wartime Love in part 2 of Come In Spinner, tomorrow at 7:45 on BBC1.
And now for the best part of 2 hours, we've sport on BBC1, focusing on the day's tennis action at Wimbledon in 50 minutes, before which we're off to the home of the Dream Mile for the Bislett Games in Oslo, our next stop on the circuit of international athletics.